day that passes without hearing the words like, tweet, and post. Whether it's Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn, social media is changing the way we communicate, share ideas, and network. What does this mean for us editors, and how can we use our social media skills to create an online presence, promote our own work, and potentially get more work? Our speaker, Ben Peterson, is here this evening to answer your social media questions. Ben is the co-founder and CEO of Newsana. Newsana is an online community where people share, discuss, and collectively surface the 5 most essential stories of the day. Newsana is designed to filter through all the junk, giving its visitors access to the best online content quickly. Just a little bit more about Ben. From May 2002 to October 2011, he served as the co-founder and executive director of Journalists for Human Rights. Under his leadership, JHR grew into Canada's largest international media development organization, running projects in 17 African countries and building one of Canada's strongest student leadership networks. Ben has received many awards for his work, including Canada's Top 40 Under 40 Award, the Action Canada Fellowship, and the Queen's University Alumni Humanitarian Award. Please welcome Ben Peterson.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And thank you to all of you for being here. And my goal over this next little while, and Andrew, you're gonna have to keep track of time because I'm terrible at it. So my goal is to try to be a little bit informative about the world of social media, and all the while not boring the heck out of all of you guys. So, who am I? Okay, the first thing that you need to know is I am at Ben P. It's my Twitter handle. So if anybody is live tweeting tonight, please give me a shout out. And at my Newsana is Newsana's Twitter handle. This talk today I've titled "Questions About Social Media I Was Always Too Afraid to Ask." Because even though I'm standing up here tonight talking about social media, there was a time, which I will get into later, where I remember very distinctly not knowing anything about social media and having my staff come up to me and talk to me about this great new thing, and I had no idea what they were talking about. So just to give you a little bit of backstory, because it flows into this conversation on social media. So as Andrew was saying, in 2001 I graduated from university and ended up in Ghana, West Africa, where I worked for the Canadian Ministry of Justice, writing Ghana's reports to the UN on international human rights treaties, including the Commission on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination and the Convention on the Rights of the Child. I fell in love with human rights in Africa. I fell in love with the efforts to improve the rights of the most disenfranchised in a country that at that point had just recently undergone a democratic transition and was finally starting to see some of the promise that the country held. I came back to Canada in 2002 and I started Journalists for Human Rights for the purpose of building the capacity of local media organizations, local journalists to report on human rights and good governance issues more effectively, to create greater public awareness of human rights and pressure on government and civil society with regard to human rights, not in Canada, but on the ground in Africa, helping Africans solve their own issues in a way that had not been done had not been done in that way at that time. One thing led to another, and I was working in my office on a project to try to figure out what are the 5 most essential human rights stories of the day that we could then send out to our supporters at JHR, because JHR has all these supporters that are interested in both human rights and journalism. So why not, as a nice little bonus, as a member of Journalists for Human Rights, we should send you from time to time a selection of human rights stories that are must-reads. We quickly realized that there was just way too much content in this world. There's just too much of it. There's so much every topic, but it's human rights as well. And we could not, with any authority or credibility, determine what are the must-read stories with regard to human rights. There's too much content for our team to go through and figure out. So we figured, what if we crowdsourced that problem? What if we got human rights experts from around the world to come together and collectively determine what are the 5 best human rights stories? We would, A, be able to make sure that most of the human rights stories out there were being considered, and B, the selection process would have some more credibility. We quickly realized, however, that this is a problem not contained just to the human rights field, and this was a solution that was too big for JHI to handle. And so at that point, I stepped away and I founded Newsana, newsana.com. I urge you all to come check it out. We launched on November 9th, and what Newsana's mission is to become the world's arbiter of quality content, connecting you to only the most influential ideas and analysis from across the internet on the topics you care about. So we want to find the best of the internet, the best analysis, and put it all in one place. And we do that by having an invite-only community of experts on various topics who do this function of finding and commenting and voting on, ultimately choosing the best of the best stories. As a side note, tonight, it's an invite-only community, but if anybody here is interested, please go on newsana.com. And in the application form, it's very brief, just mention that you saw me speak tonight, and we'll prove you right away, because we love all editors of all sorts. I actually think there's a real affinity between curation, the act of online curation, and editing that I think is an interesting parallel. I think we're actually closer, the act of curation is more closely aligned with the act of editing than it is the act of writing, but that's a whole other topic. The site is newsana.com. So where this all leads into social media, of course, is because Newsana is built on social media. Newsana is a social media network. And what I can get into all kinds of specifics about Newsana, but I'm not here to pitch you on Newsana. I'm here to pitch you on the power of social media. Okay? Our growth strategy. So what does that growth strategy mean? It means how we get members, just how we get people to sign up, and how we get visitors to the site. Right? There's a lot of different ways you can grow a website. You can pay for traffic. You can put an ad on Google or an ad on Facebook. Right? You can drive it through other various promotions. Our strategy, and increasingly a lot of online startup strategy, is 100% viral growth. So what does that mean? It means that when a member shares, so one of our community members finds a story they like, they put it on our site. At the same time, they alert all the people that are following them on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn about the fact that they posted this story on their site. Their friends that are following them on those social media networks look at that story and they click through. They come to our website. And then a certain percentage of those people sign up to become Newsana members or apply to become Newsana members. We don't approve them all, but a certain percentage of them are acquired as members. And then those people in turn share something, which then brings back more people back, and the viral loop begins. This is a very essential concept in the social media world. So this type of growth is measured as the viral coefficient. Okay? What this means, and this ultimately speaks to the real power of social media, so bear with me for a minute. The viral coefficient is a number that is calculated as such. It's how many new members, or in some cases customers or visitors or viewers or whatever you're measuring, how many new people do you get to come to your site in a given month or in a given period, so you can measure it by month, quarter, year, based on the actions of the average current member or customers or whatever. So in our case, our membership base shares a story, and then based on that, we get a certain number of new members back to our site. And we grow our site like that. So you think, well, this is kind of like whatever, right? This is like, of course this makes sense. Let's look at the numbers here. Okay? And this applies not just to Newsana, but to anybody who is interested in the power of social media. If you get one new member or customer for every current customer every 2 months, and you started 100 members, within 2 years you'll have 409,600 members. 409,600 members. Huge growth. If you get one customer every month, you're going to be at 1,677,000,000 members within 2 years. Right? That's how the power of social networks has to explode any content, anybody's work. And that's how companies like Tumblr or Instagram go from being brand new startups, being worth billions of dollars in a few short years. But this is the kind of thing that anybody who's interested in social media, who really is able to capture the essence and the power of social media, has access to. Okay? So I came today to talk to you about social media, but I'm not really sure exactly what to talk to you guys about. Because I don't know, everybody comes at social media at different levels. Some of you might be brand new to social media, others of you might be pros. Okay? But what I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about my progression with social media and questions I was afraid to ask, and then open it up to the floor and get everybody else's questions that you guys might be afraid to ask. We can have a little bit of a discussion, okay? So for me, I remember, as I was saying earlier, I remember very specifically sitting in my office at JHR. We had a young intern, a guy by the name of Andrew Rusk, who was a student at the University of Toronto. And this would have been probably in 2008 or 9. And Andrew came up to me and said, "Ben, we have to get on Twitter." And I said, "What is Twitter? What is this thing?" I didn't know anything about Twitter. I was kind of on Facebook a little bit, but I didn't really, at that point Facebook hadn't blown up the way it has now. And I didn't really know what it was. And so I was afraid to kind of ask. I was like, "Yeah, okay, that's cool. You go and do whatever you want to do over there, Andrew. Hook it up. Sounds good. Go do it, right?" But then it wasn't just Twitter. Then we went, we created a Facebook page. Then it was, LinkedIn profile, and now Instagram, and boom, 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 social media networks. So, there's more and more social media networks out there all the time. But every time one comes around, you're always, at least my reaction is always kind of like, I kind of get it, but I don't, I'm a little bit afraid to ask about the specifics of it and get into the real nitty-gritty of what these things actually mean and what the power of each of them are separately. And then the other, one of the reasons why I sort of, thought, you go, Andrew, you go do it, because Twitter was like kind of, and I did a little bit of research, it seemed like the thing that a lot of university students were doing at the time. And I was that old, but I was older than Andrew, and I was like, okay, well maybe this is a thing that you have to be a real digital native to understand. So I asked the questions, am I too old to do this social media thing? And then my question sort of slowly progressed to, why should I do social media? I've been doing fine without social media my whole life. And then I was thought about it, well, maybe it would be good, but maybe it's a waste of my time. It seems like a lot of work and a lot of effort to do all this social media stuff. And I actually went on social media and I played around with it for a little bit. And I saw a lot of self-promotional stuff. I was like, is this just a bunch of garbage that people are trying to hype themselves up over social media all the time? All right? And then, again, where do I start? Where do I start with all this stuff? And either let an intern do it. And then I was thinking, no, I should do some of this stuff too, maybe. And, but I'm not sure I'm doing it right. Like this intern obviously is smarter than I am at the social media thing, so why do I expose myself as being a total imbecile when it comes to social media and I get, let an intern totally upstage me on this? So I don't know about this, right? And then ultimately it was like, does this help? How does my effort at social media help JHR? How does it help the organization's brand? How does it get more people talking about it? What's the point? And then once I sort of figured out what the point was, then it's like, how do I take it to the next level? How do I use this to connect with thought leaders and people that are really engaged in this space? Right? And then I sort of figure that out, and then I say, like, well, how do I use it to tell the world what I'm thinking or what I'm doing? How do I use this actually, how do I capture the enormous power of this tool to tell the whole, to spread the word and get people talking about the great work we were doing in JHR and, improving the lives of millions of people through media. How do we do that, right? And so that's my journey with social media a little bit. And it's led me in very clear steps to running this whole startup based around social media, which is kind of crazy, right? So, Mike, I just want to sort of open it up to you guys and say, your questions. And I was thinking, like, social media is one of those things that can be intimidating, it can be difficult, but there are questions that I wish I had somebody, all those questions that I just posed were questions that I wish I had somebody to talk to at every single stage that I went through that and had those questions, and I didn't. And so it took me a lot longer to get my head around it than it might have otherwise. And the other thing to understand is that social media, everybody's confused by social media. The professional social media people are confused by social media. Social media changes all the time, and it's complicated, and it's different, and it's multifarious, and it's sort of a never-ending thing. And there's no shame in it to be confused about any part of it, because everybody's confused. Everybody's trying to figure it out. We're at the very beginning stages of a new way of communicating, which is based in a lot of ways on social media. And so it's like kind of like being there 5 years after the printing press was launched, right? Like the book, the novel, the form of the novel that we all know now, took a couple hundred years to figure out that that's actually how people, like 500 years, for people to figure out that's how people like to read, right? And so we don't know where the future of social media is going. We're trying to figure it out, and everybody is. But it doesn't take away from the enormous power that social media has to bring people together, to connect, to educate, to inform, to entertain, and I think it's a valuable tool in everybody's toolkit, especially as editors, especially as people in the media scene, especially as people who are engaged in ideas. I think it's a very important and sort of necessary tool now. So anyway, I leave it at that, and I'm happy to take questions, start a conversation, whatever you guys are thinking about social media, whatever I can do. Again, I don't have all the answers. No one has all the answers, but I'll do what I can. Other people here might have great responses to some of your questions too. Yes, sir.
What are your thoughts about Facebook?
What about Facebook?
It's changing all the time, and it has some pretty serious privacy issues.
So is that's your main concern, the privacy issues?
I think so. I know you get Facebook for free, and in exchange you give up information about yourself.
Yeah.
But it seems like you think you know what you're giving up about yourself, and next thing you know, they're using your name in advertising. Who knows what they're going to think of next?
So do other people here have the same issues of privacy with regard to social media? Is that a concern? Yeah. Interesting. Does anybody else have any thoughts on privacy before I say anything about it?
Is it unwise simply not to have a Facebook page and simply decide I'm not going to give out that kind of information because trusting the larger world is too big a trust?
So I think that's a personal issue. And I think
But it's not just a personal issue. Aspects of our businesses could actually be transmitted this way without our knowledge of it.
So does anybody else have thoughts? Yeah.
Well, I'm not on Facebook partly for the same reason, but is it necessary to go on with your own real name, or can you create a persona, or does that people go?
That's interesting. So, does anybody else have anything they want to say before I jump in? Yeah.
Yes, this is all related to all the previous questions. If
Yeah.
you're a writer, is there such a thing as an author's Facebook page, so it's not quite private, but it's an author's Facebook page, so it's a little bit different format, I understand it. the one and the same.
Hi, that was going to be my comment.
Yeah.
I'm an author, and I have an author's Facebook page. I have a professional page and a personal page. And they're the same. 'Cause
They are
I
the
want
same.
my name out there
Yeah.
as the author. I could go with a pen name.
Mhm.
It depends on what you want to promote. I basically use Facebook to promote me, Nina Machiano, the author. So that sort of, to me, it's a balance between being out there as a celebrity per se, in a business, and your personal life. So I don't post personal things.
So it really depends on what you post, what you have to.
That's all I feel, yeah.
I thought perhaps the formatting was different, the privacy safeguards were different, but I
No,
guess they're not.
as far as I know, they're not.
So if I can maybe jump in here, I'm curious to see where this privacy thing takes us, because there's a couple points here that I'd like to separate out. It seems like you guys are thinking about social media in terms of its professional, its role in your professional life. So you have to look at each different social media network as having a different role in your professional life. So from my perspective, a Facebook page is not really a professional tool. Your own Facebook profile, your own Facebook profile is not a really professional tool. On my Facebook page, I have, I don't know, like 1,000 friends on Facebook, but they're all like people I went to university with, or high school with, or whatever, and it's all about 90% of the content up there is who's having a new baby, and all this kind of dog photos and all this kind of stuff. Right? Facebook is increasingly such a personal network. So I would use your Facebook profile more so as a way to keep in touch with friends and family and loved ones and seeing what they're doing and all the rest. Right? Facebook is a very different tool than Twitter or LinkedIn, which I could talk to at some length. Now, a Facebook page, as opposed to a profile, isn't more of a professional tool. So a Facebook page is a sort of professional profile page that has details of your professional, whatever you want. So in Newsana, we have a Facebook page that lists all latest stories and stuff like that. And people use it on the Facebook on the Facebook platform. But in terms of your privacy on that, it is different than your personal profile. So your Facebook page, my personal profile on Facebook has nothing to do with my Newsana profile, my Newsana page. And so I can keep those totally separate. So if I don't want personal information on that site, on my Facebook, on the Newsana Facebook page, it doesn't have to be there. That being said, that doesn't really address the privacy issue as well. And I think, look, my attitude towards privacy, there's all kinds of technical issues with regard to privacy in every different platform has a different set of privacy issues. There's a lot of discussion about it. I guess the question ultimately is are you going to let your guard down a little bit and engage in the digital world or not? There's no way around it. You as an individual have to submit to the world that to a world that wants all your information and wants to learn everything about you, or not. There's not a real. You can set your privacy settings and different things that you can do, but if you really want to engage on platforms, there's not much you can do to get around privacy concerns. And we live in a world that's changing and more open and more accepting of people's, foibles and warts and wrinkles and all. And I think that, there are some issues and some things that shouldn't have happened on some of these networks, definitely. But it's difficult as an individual user to do anything about it unless you want to become a hardcore activist. So you're bound by the terms and conditions laid forth when you sign up for any of those things. good to know about them, it's good to study them, but it's part of the trade-off of being part of this world at the end of the day. So it's a decision that you have to make. Am I in or am I out? Either decision is fine, but that's part of the deal. Yes, ma'am.
You say you have a Newsana website and also a Newsana Facebook page?
Yes.
Why both? Why?
And we have a Newsana Twitter account and a Newsana LinkedIn account.
Twitter is
and
a
all
little
that.
bit different, isn't it? I mean, why the Facebook page for Newsana?
Because Facebook is a way for us to get stories out on a different platform. So the way that common strategy for most businesses is to try and, especially content-related businesses, is to try and spread your content as widely as possible across as many different platforms as possible at the same time, okay? Because you want as many eyeballs as possible, as many people to see or read your content. So someone puts a story on Newsana, on our site, like our own site, and if someone likes that, then we put it on Twitter, we put it on Facebook, we put it on LinkedIn, we put it on a bunch of other places. So it's that distribution of content is a key part of our strategy. So we use Facebook no differently than we would use, the underlying strategy anyway is the same. It's all about the distribution of content and finding ways to connect to people.
So it would make sense, for instance, I've got a WordPress blog where I'm posting articles that I'm
Yeah.
writing. It would make sense to also post them on my LinkedIn page and on a Facebook page, the same article?
Absolutely. So the question the question you have to answer for yourself is, I have this you have this WordPress blog. So what you want is you want people reading your WordPress blog, right? You want people there. So the question is, how do people come and read it? Right? So people are going to come and read it. You know, they might just hear about it, but that's unlikely. They're probably going to get a link. They're probably going to see a link to it somewhere, right? So then you set up a Facebook account, a LinkedIn account, a Twitter account. If I then follow you on those platforms, I will see that you posted it. I'll click it, and then I'll read your story. And that's the way. That's how this viral loop that I described at the beginning of this presentation begins. You get people who like if I like your story, I'm going to put it out, or your blog, I'm going to put it out on Twitter. I'm going to get 20 other people to come read it. Those 20 people are going to share it out on their Twitter account, and then, or their Facebook account, and then 20 more people. Each of them will drive 20 people, and each of them will drive 20 people, and the growth can be exponential if you hit the right tone and have content that people really want to engage with. So that's the power of using these platforms to get your word out. Yes, ma'am.
First, thank you. I'm looking forward to Newsana. I don't have time to sort through all the news.
Yeah.
I'm also on TFU. I don't know if anyone knows the TFU listserv. It's fabulous. And so I'm really looking forward to Newsana. Tell me something. I'm a digital immigrant, greenhorn, like total. I'm a little old lady. I'm editing. I'm also a therapist. I have a website. I have an EAC listing. I get referrals. I don't want people. I don't want to be out there. I don't want it. Right, so tell me, why should I do this?
If you don't want people to know about who you are, then don't do it.
No.
Stay off of it.
I don't want, when I'm in the middle of a huge editing project or I'm trying to get out the door to a client or whatever, I don't want to time emails. I can't handle it.
So it's what you're describing, it sounds to me more like an email filtration problem. So a lot of people,
I do have staff. I have no staff.
a lot of people believe that email. So I was reading actually a few articles about how email is kind of a broken system. Everybody uses email, but everybody's deluged by constant spam, and it's really hard to manage your inbox.
Spam, it's just
Or requests, or people that love you and want to come to your therapy
all those I love
thing,
very
right?
well.
There's too much attention.
I mean,
But
I don't mind them from people I love, but it's
Yeah.
just like tons of it, I can't handle it.
So I think that part of it is, is how you manage your emails too. And there's ways to do it. If you use Microsoft Outlook, which I do, you can filter.
Email?
Yeah. So you can filter, you can say, okay, I want this emails from these people into this inbox, and emails from these people into that inbox. And there's some interesting things you can do. You can read about it in your sort of,
Outlook 101 session.
Yeah.
Seminar? Never
Good idea.
Okay, thank you.
I get the Facebook thing, LinkedIn, but I find that I am really hesitant or I just feel awkward going into Twitter. I have a Twitter account, I've had it for a couple of years, but I could probably count on both hands how many tweets I've done. There seems to me to be like a step that I'd like you to talk a bit more about Twitter in terms of what its function is and how to connect it in with Facebook and LinkedIn as two examples.
So Twitter,
Here's a little bit related.
yeah, please go ahead.
As if you're, trying to build a profile for yourself, what do you start with? Do you start thinking about your blog and then?
Can you speak louder, please?
Just how do you build a profile for yourself and what is sort of the steps to do that? So just a little bit into your question.
The question is, how do you build a profile and what are the steps to do that? So first question is about Twitter. And I think there's a lot of different ways to build a profile. And I think at the end of the day, you just have to start creating content, getting the word out there. And Twitter is one of those ways to do it. So Twitter is different than Facebook fundamentally because, at Facebook, you have to accept a friendship. So I have to say I'm your friend, and you have to agree that we're friends, and then we can share information. On Twitter, it's a one-way street. I follow you, and you don't have to follow me back.
Unless you want approval before someone can follow you.
Unless you want approval, and I would highly discourage that if you want to use Twitter to get word out or to build up your profile, anything to do with professional stuff, because it limits the amount of people that see what you're tweeting. But and so Twitter tends to be a barrage of information. So I call Twitter, Newsana in a lot of ways is an answer to the problems of Twitter. Okay? So I'm not a huge, I use Twitter, but I think there's a lot of issues with Twitter because Twitter is a shotgun blast of information. Most people, I follow about 600 or 700 people on Twitter, and every second I'm just like, boom, 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 there's this new stuff coming out every second, and how do you keep up to it, right? Now, there's two elements on Twitter. There's consuming information, which is the issue that I have most with Twitter. And then there's the pushing content out. In terms of pushing content out, Twitter is great because it's quick, it's fast, you're limited to 140 characters, you can write whatever you want, you can put pictures in, you can put links in, and a whole bunch of people will see whatever, might see whatever you push out. Okay? So, on the consumption side, though, it takes a lot of work to manage all of the people that you're following. So you can create what's called Twitter lists. So there are a few tools that you can use to make your Twitter consumption habits more manageable. The tool that I use is called TweetDeck. So on TweetDeck, I wish I had an internet connection here. I'd show you my TweetDeck right now. What it does is I've created lists. So I put all of my Canadian politics people in one list. I put all my African news in one list. I put all my social media news in another list. Okay, you can do that on Twitter. You can sort people almost like you put emails in a folder or files in a folder. You can put people in these folders or these these lists. And then TweetDeck allows you to separate them all, and you can see that they'll come in as separate feeds, each of those different ones. So if you're interested right now, I want to see what's happening in social media, I can see my social media links. It takes a lot of work to do that, and it's not always the most straightforward thing, but it's manageable, and it can be an incredibly useful tool if you put your time into. So, does that answer your question?
A little bit, it touches on it. But what sort of frequency, this is sort of coming from what you're just saying, because I understand, you know, how websites work and how we need to update them and keep blogging and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Is there a sort of frequency that's expected?
To send tweets?
For tweeting?
No, there's nothing is expected.
Or-
The more you send, the more people are going to read it. Because the problem with Twitter is that a tweet has a shelf life of just 20 minutes or something.
Right,
Because
right.
on most people's feeds, it's out really quick. So unless people that are following you happen to check the Twitter feed within a few minutes of you putting your tweet up, they're never going to see it. So you have to be, constant, frequent tweets are recommended, although you don't want to do so many that people get annoyed by you and stuff.
But tools like TweetDeck allow you to time tweets, so you can prepare them in advance and
Yes.
have them fed out periodically.
That's very true as well. So did you hear what she said? So
No.
there are tools like TweetDeck and others that will allow you to schedule tweets. So we
Right.
do this at Newsana. So we'll set a whole schedule of tweets for the day or especially over the weekend, we'll do a whole schedule of tweets because we want constant activity on Twitter, but we don't have somebody who's manning our Twitter account all weekend. So we will set, 5 or 10 tweets a day. We'll schedule them in over the course of the Saturday and Sunday so that we do pick up activity on Twitter.
Have you determined the particular time in each day or a day in a week that seems to be most active?
Well, yeah, we get most of our site activity around lunchtime, around 1 o'clock. And everybody's, just come back from lunch and, wants to kind of read some interesting stuff before they go back to work, and also after work. But, there's a lot of, I don't know if you guys have any experience with MailChimp or any automated email system. They'll always tell you that you have to send an email. If you send an email between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. between Tuesday and Thursday, the percentage chances of that email being opened is 20% higher. There's all these stats about optimal times to send this. While that's important, I think that ultimately what's more important is the content is of interest to the people that you're sending it to. It's quite interesting how people are now bucking that trend because everybody's sending emails at 2 o'clock on Thursdays now. So Medium, which is a new site that was set up by the founders of the founders of Twitter, is now sending a weekly update to everybody on Friday at 4 p.m., which is unheard of. But it's now, turns out that's when they got the optimum amount of readership for that kind of content. So in a way, it depends on your audience. It depends on who's reading it. There's no magic formula in terms of time. Sorry, I'm going to go to somebody else here. There's a question in the back? Yeah.
This is maybe a more Twitter-specific question, but it does apply to the other platforms. At Newsana, how do you distinguish between pushing your content and promoting your brand? Or is that, do you have an integrated strategy and you see that as one and the same thing?
Well, it's one and the same thing. Really what we do on social media more than anything is it's a little bit about promoting the content, but for us it's more about promoting our community members. So we will, what I mean by that is instead of what we get most value out of is making our community members feel like a valued part of the Newsana community. So we'll say, hey, at Joe Smith, if that's their handle, great story on social media day, and here's the link for the story, right? So we're sending that, we're spreading content at the same time, we're rewarding our community member. And that positive reinforcement has a lot of impact on the way that they want to operate, how they want to use Newsana in the future. And a lesson for everybody in terms of your social media use. If you want a lot of people following you on Twitter or liking you on Facebook or following you on LinkedIn, then you have to use it as a platform. Not just, the best way to promote yourself is to promote others. You can't just be constantly hammering people with content. You have to interact with people and talk to people and have discussions with people and constantly engage. This is the single biggest mentality shift that people have to get over. Social media is not about pushing your content on people. Social media is about discussion and dialogue. And so yes, you can use social media to push your content out, but it's going to have a minimal effect until you start engaging with people. So instead of saying, here's my story, you say, hey, Joe Smith, read my story. I really love to hear what you think. And then that gets a dialogue back and forth.
Another question, I am on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
People are endorsing me for skills they know absolutely nothing.
I know that.
I do. Like, Miss Matters, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to?
You're supposed to don't do very much. Just
Thank
ignore
you.
that whole endorsing thing is kind of a disaster.
Endorsement that? What are they doing? People who don't know about my editing or my teaching.
Yeah. No, but I think that, and this is the thing with social media in general that I think is sometimes difficult, is that you kind of just have to roll with it sometimes. Like, because these programs change. Facebook does some stupid things once in a while, or they'll put up a new feature. Like, I know at Newsana, so we have constant issues at Newsana, like, because I know it so well. I can give you millions of examples, but where, well, our developers, or the guys who code the site, will make a little mistake, right? And part of our site changes for like a couple hours or whatever until we figure it out. But it's really annoying to the people that are part of it. So we're also we're trying to we're always changing the site and adapting and experimenting and trying stupid things like this endorsed by or whatever, right? But it's ultimately everything that a website does is in some ways an experiment, because they then see on the back end, oh, this works or this doesn't work. And then they're constantly adapting and changing the platform based on the community's acceptance or dismissal of that particular part of their product, which is a fascinating part of website development, which I can get into at length, but it's not necessarily why I'm here. There's a question, yeah.
Yeah, mine isn't so much a technical question, it's sort of a protocol question. I'm wondering how other people handle it. Some of us, of course, are writers, but most of us work as editors. So the problem that I feel we come up against is how, is it ethical for me to say, well, I just finished a story that Minnie Mouse wrote about Disney. I mean, how do other people handle that? Do you go to the author and say, is it okay with you if I mention this on my, I don't have to, okay, but do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's not, we're being legitimate and that we're not going to do it written, we're claiming validity. But there is a certain protocol and a certain, ethic involved in, like, maybe Minnie Mouse doesn't want everybody to know right now that her story, about Disney, right, is going to be coming out. So I'm curious how other people handle that.
First thing I would do is go to see if you're giving out hints that book's coming out. And then the next thing I would do on my Twitter feed would be like, hey, Minnie Mouse, love your book. Can't wait till it's actually released in public. Oh, I got to see first. And then it's a shoot out to the author, and then you'll probably get people going, hey, what's going on here? And then they'll go check out the author's site.
Well,
and
a
the author
lot
will
of
say,
the stuff that I work on, it will be public, but it's not stuff that's heavily promoted. Like, probably nobody's going to, well, I don't really know, but probably nobody's going to be putting it out there that this particular document is coming out, whatever. And I just feel, I feel awkward sort of going to writers and saying,
So my
And I use
general,
your work to promote my work, you know.
my general philosophy would be if it's any way feels unethical or questionable, just don't do
I
it.
guess
Right?
we're all.
You can use,
No, very
but if it's awkward, whatever, social media is not meant to create awkward moments, although it does. It's not, that's the problem with social media. It's really easy to do stupid stuff on it. But,
Respect to then what do I put on? If I stay away from that.
But you can talk about all sorts of other things. You can talk about, a big part of social media is sort of thought leadership. I don't know, you can talk about the things that you're thinking about in terms of
But
your
how does that
editing.
promote
Promotes you
Do
as
you have LinkedIn?
Yes.
So that, I had a client of mine, like, put a lovely endorsement, but one that she wrote.
Well,
If you
I don't want to
got-
get into a whole thing, but I've been in an argument with LinkedIn for the last 2 weeks, and I've hidden all, for the same reasons you mentioned, I've hidden all my endorsements, because they now have this thing where they just pick up keywords, I guess, and they put these things up. So I have all these endorsements for things I don't do.
No,
I'm
this is
just
one that a client
Can you not
writes.
Yeah, can you not So consequently, people don't know that they were supposed to scroll down to see the things that I myself have written. So as a consequence, then I have hidden all my endorsements
So-
and recommendations.
Are there other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Comment on hashtags?
Too many of them.
Yeah, there can be too many hashtags in a message. Hashtags are a way to get your content into more streams, right? So, because people search by hashtag. So if you search for, is there a hashtag for this event, for example? So a lot of, there is? So-
EAC Toronto.
That's our handle.
No, we'll use hashtag as well.
So there are a lot of events will have a hashtag, so everybody in the room follows that hashtag and sees it, or a lot of people, in journalism, a lot of people use the hashtag journalism. And then people follow that. What's that?
Use hashtag editors rock the whole way.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's kind of a cool hashtag. So editors rock, so and that's a way to get your content seen by more people. So a lot of people use it and just put out lots of hashtags, but I think that you can get away with 2 or 3 in a tweet. Let's start with that.
I love the idea of hashtags. I have a television and a radio, and if there's a story that I want to know about, I'm not sure what channel on the radio is going to be talking about it at any given time, or what TV channel is going to be talking about it at any time, or even where in the newspaper they were talking about it yesterday. But I know that if I search Twitter for a hashtag, there's going to be somebody talking about it, and maybe within a few clicks I will hit the mother lode. For example, I had tickets to Radiohead a couple of summers ago, and I was all ready to step out the door, and I wanted to know what the people who were standing in line all afternoon were thinking about before I left, and one of them tweeted, "The stage just collapsed, don't bother coming." And it took another 3/4 of an hour before it got to any of the new news outlets. So I just like its immediacy that way, and it's just so convenient if you want to know something that's happening now.
Totally agree. And that's why Twitter, I think, is going to win the day in breaking news. Nobody can compete with Twitter in breaking news. That kind of instant stuff, just like, yes, in the back.
Would you recommend promoting hashtags, for example, separately from, say, the account that you are working from? Say, for an event like this, promoting the hashtag, saying, use the hashtag editors rock.
Yeah, so in this context, what I would say is, at the beginning, I would say, here's the hashtag. Everybody who's live tweeting this event, use this hashtag. And then it just allows everybody in this room who's live tweeting to follow that hashtag and to figure out what people are saying. So we got somebody over here saying I'm doing a terrible job, and someone over here saying I'm doing a great job. They can have a little debate, and I don't have to know anything about it until I go back later and see it and get really pissed. But by then I'm gone, so it doesn't matter. So I would really, I would do that. Are we running out of questions here? Yes, sir.
How do you respond just to the general observation that most of what is on the internet is not in fact professional information? The idea that it's essentially junk. And so you have high school teachers trying to convince their students to go to books and not to the internet because most of the facts that they see on the internet are not in fact trustworthy.
I would 100% agree. I 100% agree. There's no doubt. So on that, in a lot of ways is why we're doing Newsana, is because we believe there's just too much content. 70% of online news consumers feel overwhelmed with the amount of content available to them. And a lot of that has to do with as the fragmentation of media, of traditional media happens online, people are pushed into social media networks, and people have an inherent distrust from the information they find on social media. So 26%, only 26% of Americans surveyed trust the content that they get from social media, whereas 71% trust newspapers and 76% trust TV. And so we can debate all that, but what's important here is that social media has not yet become credible. It's not yet a credible source for information, even though it's an amazing source for information. It still doesn't have that sort of New York Times or Globe Mail sort of brand. And so that's why we created Newsana, is to create that social media place that is credible, where you know that the news is really high quality and trustworthy when you come to Newsana.
Oh, I've got a question.
Yeah.
How do the news topics on Newsana compare to what the newspaper editor is choosing?
So on Newsana, the topics, so we have about 40 different topics on Newsana, everything from future media to social media to human rights to climate change, to all kinds of things, entrepreneurship. And so we have many more topics than any particular newspaper would have. But essentially, a newspaper, one of the roles of a newspaper editor is to choose which stories go into the newspaper. That's what Newsana's community members do, choose which stories gets into our paper, our newspaper. It's not
Also, university and college and high school teachers need to be educating students how to assess a credible website.
They do.
So that's, and we do, and that's covered in a lot of, in many course content. It needs to be more. Oh yeah, you just have to know how to assess, yeah, a website.
Okay.
All right, do we have any more questions? Maybe we'll take another one.
Everybody wants to get out of here.
What about the whole question of information depth? The argument that an article on person X will never have the same depth or detail as a book on person X. Are we moving too much in the direction of the article type of apprehending the universe and comprehending our depth of understanding of it?
I think it's a lot about, in some ways it's like the medium is the message problem here. As you know, the phone makes it really difficult to read like a lot of content. So it's quick, snappy stuff. It's why that guy, that British guy, 17-year-old, was able to sell his news site for $30 million because he found a way to take a 800-word news article and compress it into 50 words automatically. And the site blew up. It's the most popular thing on the internet for a few weeks. Yahoo saw it, wanted the technology, bought it for $30 million. This 17-year-old kid is richer than me for sure. So, but the phone is more short form, right? Tablets, you can read a little bit longer, so people read a little bit longer. PCs, same thing. But yeah, I think that there's definitely issues there. But it's the way that, and that's from a news consumer, from a news producer's perspective. The trick here, and this is more of a long-term, this is like totally off topic here, but what a lot of people in the entrepreneurial side of news are thinking about right now is how do you match news consumption habits with news production habits. So over the course of the day, people have different devices, use different devices over the course of the day. So in the morning, first thing, you might get out your phone as you're waking up. Right? Then you might go to a tablet over breakfast. Then you might go back to your phone on the subway. Then you go to a PC for most of your time during the day at lunch. You go to a desktop, and then on the way home, you go to your phone, and then at home, you go to a tablet, right? And so it's this whole progression of how you consume stuff. So as a news producer, how do you deliver different content at different times of the day to people according to how they want to consume it at that very moment? It's a very interesting thing that a lot of people are trying to get their heads around. Nobody. That's the problem. Advertiser.
Do we not use that or just?
Yeah.
On Newsana. Oh, so we push link. We link it all out. So we don't house any of the content on our site. We provide links to the original content sources, which are propped up by
But would you
advertisers.
give a royalty to an author, for instance, or you just are pushing it out?
No, we're not. We don't house any of the content on our site, right? So there's not. We have zero copyright issues. We're just pushing. We're just saying, hey, check out this article on NewYorkTimes.com.
But you must have a business model, how are you getting paid advertisements?
We're not yet. We raise money. We will have advertising eventually on our site, and maybe some subscription stuff. But
How do you get around the paywall problem with newspapers putting paywalls in?
sorry. Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I just actually wanted to respond to what Mr. was saying in terms of the difference between books and social media. And I heard an interview the other day that sort of highlighted the issue for me, which is I think even though I think we as a society are moving away from books and more in-depth thing, there's an interview with a fellow who had just written a book on Jim Bezos, Amazon.com, and he spent all his time and researched it, and it was close to going to press, and then Jim Bezos bought the Wall Street Journal, which is huge.
Washington Post.
Washington Post. Huge thing that the author never would have. The thing about books is that they are fixed in time. So they're great to have to get more of a historical perspective and get the depth that you're talking about, but they can be, aspects of them can be made obsolete very quickly, just things are fixing so quickly. But there's room for both.
What's it done to our attention span?
Shorten it.
And let me put it in this way. Given late 1700s gives us the decline fall of the Roman Empire. 3,000 pages long. Rich in detail. Do you think it could be published today?
Sure.
Do you think people would
A lot
read
of
it?
times what's but it's I'm not in the book industry. I'm not the right person. You guys are the right people to ask that question. I'm not. I don't have. I don't know. But I think that it wouldn't be consumed on Twitter. That's what I can tell you.
Maybe we can discuss during the.
And just to answer your question, the paywall issue that a lot of people have come across. So most paywalls have a limit of, most paywalls are called porous paywalls. So you can visit a site usually 10 times, read 10 articles on the site per month before you have to pay. And so in actual fact, the paywall, so only on average in North America, 2% of a newspaper's regular visitors will actually pay for that paywall. The other 98% are now finding that they are being scattered. So it's leading actually to a way, like a even deeper fragmentation of web traffic than existed previously. And in some ways that really opens up the door to news aggregators and curators it gives it more potential prominent role to them as the news world moves forward. But anyway, I'm happy to talk to you guys further. We're over time now. Thank you guys so very much. At Ben PD. Find me on Twitter. Ask me questions on Twitter. I'd be happy to follow with all of you guys and whatever I can do.
Thank you so much, Ben.
Thank you.
On behalf of the editors